Mr. Speaker, 10 years of radical open borders policies and mass migration have undermined confidence in what was the best system of immigration anywhere in the world. The Liberals imposed this radical approach without any care, consideration, or thought for the strains it would place on our housing, health care, and job market. And the result is chaos in our streets. But nowhere is this problem more acute than in the area of lawlessness and criminality that Liberals have invited through the system. They have allowed people to come to this country and get visitor visas and other permits to enter Canada without actually performing any criminal background checks. To this day, there are 400 criminals who have since been ordered deported but have not left and have vanished completely into Canadian society. Furthermore, our legal system now discriminates against Canadians and in favor of non-Canadian, non-citizen criminals who are here. In fact, lowering the sentences that they receive for convictions in order to allow them to stay. An unbelievable perversion of justice, which does exactly the opposite of what we should seek. It should be a stated policy of our system to get criminals out of Canada. If someone is not a citizen, not a Canadian, and commits a crime, then they should be shown the door, because becoming a citizen of this country requires good, law-abiding behavior that will protect the well-being and the interests of this country. And let me read through some examples of this kind of backwards thinking that is pervaded in our system. In the Pham decision, a key matter was that the sentence had to be reduced in order to allow the defendant to stay in the country. In 2023, in another case, a 30-year-old man, Akash Kumar Kant, tried to have sex with a 15-year-old at a Mississauga hotel for $140, but only received a conditional sentence because a stronger penalty would have hindered him and his wife's ability to obtain Canadian citizenship. On June 25th, Kant was sentenced to a conditional discharge for committing an indecent act. For 3 months, he will be placed under house arrest. During which time he was able to go shopping for 3 hours every Sunday, attend religious services, medical appointments, and travel to and from work. 12 months of probation afterwards. In other words, his sentence was specifically reduced so that he could stay in Canada. In 2024, a 25-year-old non-citizen, originally in Canada on a study permit, then a visitor permit, sexually assaulted an 18-year-old at a club in Calgary. Despite being found guilty, the court, led by Judge Anne Brown, took into account that he would be deported without appeal if the charge was one of sexual assault. Therefore, the court decided to discharge him and subject him to 15 months of probation. If he had been a Canadian, he would have been convicted of sexual assault and actually gone to jail. But as a privilege for being here as a non-citizen, non-Canadian, he had his sentence reduced to no jail time, and therefore he was allowed to stay in this country. In July 22nd, 2025, a Canadian judge hit the brakes on a guilty plea from a non-citizen linked to a homicide and facing serious criminal charges, citing discomfort with the fact that the accused would likely be deported if found guilty. Victor Buran, a 22-year-old Filipino national, was set to plead guilty on multiple charges stemming from a high-risk takedown by Barrie police earlier this year. He was arrested on January 17th, along with several co-accused, after officers stopped a vehicle in a North End plaza and allegedly found drugs and firearms, and yet sentence reduced to preserve citizenship possibility. In October of 2025, Roosevelt Rush, a Jamaican national convicted of smuggling 55 grams of cocaine while on bail, already on bail, had his sentence slashed in half to just 12 months from what would have been a proportionate due sentence, in part because of his immigration status. And again, on October the 2nd, 2025, a judge reduced the sentence of Ashwin Sajeevan, who was here on a study visa, to just 5.5 months in jail because a sentence of 6 months would have made him inadmissible to Canada on grounds of serious criminality. The judge specifically weighed, and I quote, the immigration consequences, end quote, for the former international student who spied on his female housemates through a peephole that he used through the bathroom, through the bathroom wall, where he made videos recording the 4 of them in various stages of undress over a period of 6 months, Mr. Speaker. Example after example of where judges are specifically lowering the sentences of non-Canadian citizens in order to allow them to stay in Canada. Mr. Speaker, we welcome law-abiding, hard-working Canadian immigrants, people who want to come and productively build our country while following our laws. What we do not welcome is people who want to come here and commit crimes. And that is why I'm very pleased that the member for Calgary-Nose Hill has introduced the bill on which I rise today, Bill C-220, an act to amend the criminal code, which would prohibit judges from lowering sentences or penalties on the basis of immigration status. We have one law. It should apply to every person equally. A person does the crime, they should do the time, and if that makes them ineligible to stay in Canada, then they must leave. Point final. That's just the reality. Mr. Speaker, Canadians have the right to live in peace and tranquility. They have the right to know that when they walk out the front door, they won't be harmed. They should also have the right to valued citizenship. We don't give away citizenship to anyone who comes here and breaks our laws. That arriving here as an immigrant means that there is a certain degree of responsibility, just as there is for those who are born here. And those responsibilities include following the laws, respecting others, and protecting the safety of fellow Canadians and newcomers to this country. Mr. Speaker, we believe in a system of controlled, merit-based immigration where we welcome people who want to join the Canadian family, work hard, succeed, build a better life. And the vast majority of immigrants seek exactly that. They come often fleeing violence and danger. But when they arrive here, they do not expect to be victimized by criminals who then use loopholes in order to stay in Canada and avoid penalty under the law. We as Conservatives believe Canada can once again be a safe place where all people feel that they live in peace and harmony, where their property and their persons are protected, where everyone is equal under the law, where people are held accountable for their behavior, and where most of all, the Canadian law becomes paramount, and anyone who comes here understands that following the law is the basic responsibility that is necessary to graduate from visitor to temporary resident to permanent resident and eventually to citizenship. Citizenship in Canada must have restored value, and that value starts with respecting the safety and the security of every Canadian and the rule of law in our land. Thank you.